be kind to people and don't be afraid to tell people the truth. It's not just about the machines that the people drive, it's about the people behind the machines running them and their own stories. Not everything's going to be easy while you're out shooting content, and you just kind of got to go with the flow of things. There's so much technology inside of a planner. It takes a lot more than just dropping a seed in the ground.
Welcome back to the Egg Creators Podcast, where we help connect consumers to farmers. Today we're talking with Carter Hibma, a farm kid who creates content on social media on a mission to show the world the real story of modern farming. We'll dive into what motivates him, how he's reaching audiences that aren't farmers, and why he believes telling these stories is more important now more than ever. Let's jump into it. Carter, thanks for joining the Egg Creators Podcast. Tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Thanks for having me, Zach. I am a currently I'm a college student and I live in Northwest Iowa. I have a passion for ag media, and I'm really happy to be here today.
So how did you get into? I followed your stuff for a long time, and I like everything that you post. How did you get into ag content creation and showing what goes on a farm?
So I grew up on a farm, obviously near Harris, Iowa, in the northwest corner. Um, so I grew up around agriculture. We used to have three different hog sites until about 2021, and then we got out of hogs, and now we're just in a corn and soybean rotation.
Okay. So you grew up on a farm. Did you have you always kind of liked flying drones and getting that stuff? Because it seems like you just started posting stuff on social media within the last like year or 2 years.
Oh yeah, ever since I was a kid, I loved being around ag. Whether that was helping dad with hog chores or mowing the lawn, or even if it was running the combine or the tractor in the fall, I've always enjoyed being around ag. I'm fairly new to this ag content wise, so I'm just getting started, but it's been a lot of fun.
So now, Carter, you're doing a little bit different stuff this summer. You're actually interning kind of with us a little bit on the Ag PhD side. What are you doing this summer? What are you hoping to gain? Are you going back to school? What are your future plans for this summer?
Yep, so this summer, obviously, I'm working alongside you, Zach. I'm kind of splitting my time between helping with the media side, helping shoot TV shows, social media content, and then I'm also splitting time working on some verify stuff, which is about the precision ag, working on prescription maps, helping customers set up their Ops Center accounts and stuff like that. Uh, this fall, the plan is to go back for more schooling. The first time I graduated from Mitchell Tech with an associate's degree in precision ag, and now I'm going to go back for more schooling at Dakota Wesleyan and go for a entrepreneurial leadership degree in hopes of starting my own other businesses someday.
That's exciting. I wish. So I'm getting my degree in forestry, and I've got one more year left. Looking back, I wish I did something like that. That seems like it'd be really helpful down the road.
Yeah, life kind of threw a curveball at me, and it's a little different path than what I expected. But the 2 years that I spent at Mitchell Tech have been awesome, and I can't wait for 2 more years to learn something else.
You know, Jack, we're kind of doing the hands-on learning here, trying to start a
That's right.
podcast, trying to grow a business, doing the marketing, doing all the sides of it. So you're kind of
I
doing the
feel like
hands-on learning on it.
some days I feel like I'm learning the hard ways, but I don't know if it's better or not.
Well, that's kind of how it goes sometimes. You got to learn
That's
the hard
right.
way. It's also
That's
easier to
right.
learn. I mean, when you mess up, you obviously knew you knew you messed up. You learned. If you don't try, you
Especially
don't know.
especially when you have some money in it. It's really easy to remember when you messed up when you have some money invested in it.
Exactly. Now, Carter, for you, so we talked a little bit about hands-on. You came up, grew up on a farm. What about the content creation side? Not everyone has to post on social media about what they're doing on their farm, but you're deciding to. Why did you want to get into that?
Yep. So it all started a couple years back. I had a GoPro, and I'm like, well, let me just throw it on a tractor and see what happens. And then I ended up recording our harvest a little bit, and then I enjoyed doing that. And then later that fall, we had some neighbors chopping corn, I think it was corn or alfalfa, one of the two. I'm like, well, I'll just take Dad's drone out because he had a Phantom 4 at the time, which is a big drone compared to what they have now. But I took the Phantom 4 out and I recorded the neighbors going, and I'm like, well, this is a lot of fun. Um, and so I kept doing it, and then I ended up buying my own Mini 3, and then I started doing more stuff for the neighbor and a couple family friends, and then I just took off from there.
Yeah, that's how we all start. You start from square one, just picking up a camera or drone, not really knowing what's going on or what you're doing, because none of us went to school to do videography or photography. Pick it up, learn as we go, and that's what makes it fun. You just never know what each day is going to bring and what new thing you're going to learn.
Yeah, it's definitely been interesting to learn. Obviously, I'm not the newest person at this, so I know a little bit, but there's already so much more you can learn from other people and make awesome connections with some neighbors, friends, and other clients.
You're surrounding yourself with great people this summer.
Yeah, I know it's pretty awesome opportunity that I have.
So how did
So
you get connected with Hefty Seed and Ag PhD for this summer?
So actually, was I'd worked a couple of the Egg PhD field days recently in the last couple of years. And then I really started to talk with Zach about just some fun ag stuff. And then Zach came to me this March, I think it was March, and he said, "Hey, would you like to come and at least try it out?" And I was like, "Oh yeah." It's hard to turn that down.
That's exciting.
So, Carter, when you talk about making content that's on the farm, most of the audience out there in the world, if it gets broadcast to more people, 99% or 98% of people aren't farmers. So, how do you relate things that you're seeing on the farm to people that have no idea what's going on the farm?
So I would say probably the technology and the equipment is the most part. Most people just drive down the interstate and they see a cornfield and it's like, well, how did that corn get there? That corn had to get there somehow. And I think like planters are extremely cool because there's so much technology inside of a planter. It takes a lot more than just dropping a seed in the ground. And obviously, technology, like I said, there's a lot of people that really love technology, no matter what the source of, whether that be your phone, robotics, just people being able to see what the technology is like. I think a lot of people really like.
What have you? So we had Riggs Ware on the podcast last week, and one of the questions we asked him was, "What is one of the common misconceptions that you've heard in ag when you've been traveling or wherever you've been, and because there's a ton of misconceptions out there. What's one that you've heard that I don't know, kind of stuck with you, or I know there's some that kind of stuck with me that I'm like, that's not really how it happens on a farm."
Hmm. Well, a lot of people don't, there's a lot of byproducts from agriculture. Not a lot of people know that. People think, hey, I have a lot of corn. A lot of people can eat that. Well, no. I mean, we grow number 2 yellow dent corn on our farm. A lot of that goes into animal feed or ethanol or a lot of other byproducts that normally you wouldn't think of. So once people realize that agriculture is just more than feeding people and animals, there's a lot more that you can learn about agriculture.
For sure, and that's one of the cool things that so I didn't grow up on a farm, and up until 4 or 5 years ago, I had no idea. I didn't know anything about ag, and so going into taking pictures and kind of learning from these farmers in our area in North Alabama, a lot of that corn goes to chicken feed, and that's something that if you would have asked me, or if you asked somebody who's not in ag, they'd probably think, oh, corn, we probably eat it, but not necessarily. We might eat a byproduct of it. We might eat the chicken who ate it at Chick-fil-A, but we aren't necessarily eating that corn. And so there's a lot of byproducts, and there's a lot of, I don't know, it fans out a lot more than you think, a lot more than I thought.
Yeah, exactly. You
Yeah.
can definitely see that in a lot of areas.
So how do you balance? So you said you're in school, and you're working for the Hefties this summer. How do you balance, balancing school and content creation and work? And it can at least for me, it can be hard. How do you balance all of that? And because you're doing great stuff.
Yeah, thank you. Um, it's hard, especially being a full-time college student and then trying to work on top of that. There's not a lot of times that I can get out and shoot. So I think when I get the opportunity, I have to go after it. You might have to drive an hour down the road after class just to go shoot. It's tough, but it's definitely doable. Doing all this extra stuff isn't easy. Um, but I enjoy what I do.
So, Carter, when you start working with some other farmers, sharing their story out on the farm, do they have anything that they want to show you, non-farmers, or anything that they don't want to show on their farm? Is there any pushback from them saying, no, I don't want you to post about my farm or anything like that? How do you go showing non-farmers the farm and talking to actual farmers into allowing you to go out there and film them?
Well, it's definitely not easy. Not everybody wants to see their farm, or if they want to see their farm, they're very skeptical about what they see. They may not want their name on it. If you show a shot of their semi, they may not want their name on there. And that's kind of difficult, but you kind of got to do what the farmer wants you to do. Um, Not everything's going to be easy while you're out shooting content, and you just kind of got to go with the flow of things.
That's one of the most frustrating things that I've run into is so a local farmer I went to go I saw him spraying, and so I stopped, and I didn't talk to him that day, and so I just stopped and flew the drone. And after 3 drone batteries, he saw me and called me and was like, "Hey, there's a lot of weeds in this field. Don't post any of this." And I was, coming from his perspective, I'm like, all right, I get that. But after 3 or 4 drone batteries, it's like, dang, that's an hour and a half, of flying the drone and getting stuff. But at the end of the day, I mean, like Carter said, you kind of just have to go with it.
Yeah, it can be quite annoying, but sometimes you just got to do what you got to do. And I've had a lot of people that are really skeptical about when I come, but after I send them some videos or some pictures, they're like, "Oh, this is awesome, and we need you to come back." So sometimes it starts out annoying, but then you just start to make those connections, and they want to see you.
You just have to build trust.
Yeah, that's a big thing.
When you're showing about all these different tractors in the field, is there any negative side or people that are off the farm that have any things to say about it? Or is it mainly just, oh, that's a pretty cool piece of equipment that's out in the field going along?
I wouldn't say it's necessarily negative. It's just a lot of questions on why do you spray this way? Why do you do tillage this way? Why does why does a farmer plant when he does? It's tough to explain to some people, but you have to be able to relate to other people. Like, hey, I may not know as much about ag as you or Jack, so you're gonna explain something easier to me, then I want to do that to the other person. I don't want to make something difficult explaining to somebody. Sometimes you just got to be kind to people and don't be afraid to tell people the truth.
I have some of those questions for y'all up there because I'll see some of y'all's content and you'll be doing tillage a certain way or something. And down here, it's completely different. And it feels like I'm trying to learn just as much as somebody outside of ag because y'all, down here in the Delta, we have poly pipe and, we'll go over the field multiple times getting ready to water it. And then, obviously like side dressing and stuff like that. But it's cool to see y'all's perspective up there because y'all are growing the same crop but it's much different processes.
Yeah, I mean, we're a lot different than every farmer is different. I mean, we strip till in the fall, and then we just pull right into the field in the spring and set the planter down and we go. And then there's other farmers that are out there that'll work the field a couple times, and that's just how they farm. Whatever works for your farm is probably the best.
Talking about different farming practices, what crops do you grow on your farm, Carter, and kind of what are some of the uses for those crops?
Right now it's just corn and soybeans. We've always been corn and soybeans. Back when we had pigs, a lot of the hog feed or the corn that we had went to the local elevator, and then it was put right back into the hog feed, which is fed to the hogs on our farm. But now most of it goes back to the local elevator anyway. What happens after that, it either goes back in the animal feed or it gets trucked off to somewhere else. And we do try and take some to the ethanol plants, but that can be kind of tough because we're kind of in a rural area and you got to travel a ways to go deliver grain.
Yeah, you brought up the ethanol piece. A lot of people think that it's food or fuel, but really it's food and fuel. They can use part of the corn for fuel, for ethanol, and
Hmm.
they take out the starches, which is then used for feed. So it's really both sides of it, food and feed. And that's why it's so great to process, because they don't, they take the byproduct from the ethanol and it goes right back into feed. So they just take the part, make fuel that's great fuel for your vehicles, and then they can also have feed from it. So that's the awesome part about ethanol.
Yeah, it's kind of a win-win for everybody.
So Carter, I'm not I didn't grow up in ag. I'm not familiar with hogs at all. Explain to, let's say somebody who's not in the ag industry, how long do y'all have the hogs on y'all's farm? Like what does it take to raise hogs?
So we had feeder hogs. So we had them from they weren't newborns. They were maybe a couple weeks old when they finally hit our farm. But then once they were in our barns, they had all the access to the feed and the water that they needed. And other than that, I mean, we didn't have to take care of them very much, give a couple shots and whatnot. But a lot of the hogs on our farm ended up going to processing plants, um, to be turned into food for people.
That's something that we have a lot of chicken houses around us, but we don't have a whole lot of hogs.
Yeah, I would say 90% of our area is a lot of hogs. There is some chickens, and some beef, but I would say the main livestock around us is probably pork.
As a consumer of pork, and there's a lot of people that don't know what goes into that, is there any different things that you talk about when people say, "Oh, you have pork on your farm, you have pigs"? That must be scary. I don't want to hurt the animals. Is it pretty good conditions that they're staying in, and how does that kind of work on the backside?
Yeah, so all of our pig after we had a load of pigs and they went off to the processing plant, all the barns are cleaned with soap and water and disinfectant. So all the barns are really clean. The barns had heat and AC, so we could control the temperature. Very comfortable in the barn. You could walk in when it was super cold in the wintertime and it could be 70, 80 degrees in there and you were almost sweating. So the pigs are very safe. We didn't really mess with pigs a lot. I mean, once they were in their pens, they were happy. Other than maybe you had one or two get riled up that you had to move to a separate pen. Um, but overall, pigs were pretty awesome on our farm. Other than occasionally they got out, and that was kind of a pain in the butt. Um, they're not easy to get back in the barn, but overall, the pigs on our farm was a pretty good experience.
So let me ask you this. So this is off topic from the pigs, but if you could collaborate with, and we asked this to Riggs, and we have a couple questions that we want to ask to everybody who's on the podcast just to see. If you could collaborate with any ag content creator out there, who would it be?
That is a great. I don't really know. I mean, there's so many out there that are good, you know. You got Zach's good. Ryan Seaman is a guy that I follow a lot. Um, there's so many out there. I don't know if I would necessarily like to collaborate with a farmer. I would like to see a lot of different crops. Being from Northwest Iowa, all I see is corn and soybeans. It'd be cool to get out and see the sunflowers, the potatoes, the rice, and the cotton sometime. Um,
You'll have to come down and see rice. Rice is a really cool crop.
yeah, I would love to come down. I mean, living in Northwest Iowa, it's not bad seeing corn and soybeans all the time. It'd just be cool to see something else and how it works.
That's where, and I didn't, realize this necessarily coming into the ag industry, but we're very lucky down here in regards to, like we have. I don't know if you have a lot of wheat, but we have a lot of wheat, and then obviously we have a lot of cotton and rice. And I don't know. Cotton's just a cool crop. Zach came down and saw it last fall, and I don't know. It's just there's not as much cotton as there used to be, but it's cool to see.
Yeah, I can say there's maybe one other farmer around us that plants wheat or oats. Otherwise, it's just all corn and soybeans. So normally when you drive down the road, it's a little funky. When you're driving by this guy's field and you see a bunch of wheat out there, you're like, am I in Northwest Iowa or where am I? Um, it's definitely cool to see them come in and combine. It's a little different just being, most of the guys you see, they're out combining corn and soybeans, and then, oh, here's this guy out combining wheat. It's cool. It'd be cool to see it in places where it's more popular.
Wheat is probably one of my favorite crops because it's, I don't know, it's during the summer, and so it was always during summer break. And, a lot of them are kind of in a rush to get through to plant, beans after. And so, they'll get 5 or 6 combines in one field and start cutting, which, during the fall, they don't run 5 or 6, but they're just in such a hurry to get the wheat beans in that they'll run 5 or 6 combines, and that's probably the highlight of my summer. I love it.
Yeah, that's kind of the unfortunate thing about where we live is it's 2 crops and that's all you plant. So during the summer times, it's kind of down other than spring. So yeah, I mean, that's the plus to where you
Hey, count
live.
your blessings though. It gets up to like 105, 110 pretty easily. So I don't know who has it better.
Yeah, you got the warm. We deal with the cold winters.
That's right.
Yeah, seeing a lot of different crops is pretty awesome. Going down to Alabama, well, really anywhere you go, there's agriculture everywhere and there's different crops grown everywhere pretty much. And so when you see that, you just know that there's different management practices going in every single crop. So if you're in an area where there's 5, 10 different crops, every single crop's managed a little bit differently, no matter if it's even different kinds of corn. On our farm, we have silage corn and we have grain corn, which I'm going to make a video about the differences between that. But it's the same crop and it's managed 2 different ways. So there's just differences in every single field. Almost every single field that you see, there's going to be differences in them. And there's the one side of it where there's differences in every field and every crop, but there's also differences in every single farmer. So Carter, when you talk to different farmers and different people that aren't in farming, how important is it to not just see the tractors and crops that are in the field, but also to see the farmer that's behind the operation?
Yeah, I think it's a very huge part, and it's one of my favorite parts to document. We'll just we'll take my dad and grandpa for example. They were through tough years when the crop prices were low and times were hard, and now we've got nice equipment. They've worked hard for what we have now, and it's not to brag or anything, but that's just how it's been. Is dad and grandpa have worked hard, and they've worked hard for what they wanted. It kind of reminds me of the A&F decal on the Iowa Hawkeye helmets. It says America needs farmers. Now, of course, the backstory is they started putting these on the helmets in the 1980s when there was the farm crisis. And it just said that America needs farmers. Agriculture is such an important part of the world. It's not just about the machines that the people drive, it's about the people behind the machines running them and their own stories.
So now talking about sharing that story, what advice would you have for people just like yourself or kind of like us that are sharing people's stories, talking to farmers, getting the story out there? How important is it for farmers to be willing to share their story and for people to help them share it to social media to help people that aren't not farmers hear more about the farm?
Yeah, the biggest thing I would say is don't be afraid to fail or don't be afraid to reach out. There's been times where it's like, oh, do I really need to do this? Or do I really need to buy this drone? I've been nervous about asking if I could stop and film sometimes because I'm worried they might say no. But you just got to go for it and you got to trust your gut. Not every video is going to be perfect. You're not going to get, there's going to be days where you're not going to get the likes or the views you want, and you just got to keep trying. It's for me, it's not so much about the views and the likes, it's more about sharing people's stories. I've had many people,
That's spot on.
I've had many people around me ask me, "Hey, what drone do you have? I want to buy a drone." Or how did you get set up the way you did? And it's been awesome to see. I was kind of the first one in the area that had one. And now there's a whole bunch of them around us, and everybody's showing their own farms. And it makes me feel good because I get to see other people succeed, and share the same passion that I do.
That was spot on. You hit every point.
All right, Carter. So we talked a little bit about farming. We talked a little bit about content creation, social media, some advice. Now, what about you? Where do you see yourself in the next 5 years?
Uh, that's a great question. Sooner or later, I'd like to start my own company, get a bunch of guys together and travel the U.S. and share and document farmer stories on a national level, kind of like Clayton Atlas, for example. Um, I love I love agriculture, and being able to share people's stories is my passion.
So before we wrap up, Carter, where can people find you? What's your handle on Instagram? Where can they find you?
You can find me on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook. Most of my stuff is under Carter Hibma Agri Films. I do some other photo and video, so you want to make sure that you follow my ag stuff if you want that.
Perfect. Well, I'm glad we finally got you on the podcast. We've talked a lot on Instagram, and we haven't had like a in-person conversation. And so I enjoyed learning a little bit about your background and what you want to do. And I think we all share the same passion for just telling farmer stories. And so it's really cool to hear your perspective and hear your passion. This will come out, and obviously we'll post reels about this, and then stay tuned for our next podcast. I appreciate y'all listening.
Thank you for having me.